In the vast darkness of the cosmos, a new force began to stir. The galaxy, long dominated by ancient empires, was on the brink of a cataclysmic shift. The great houses of the Seven Empires had ruled unchallenged for centuries, each with its own fleet of formidable warships, vast resources, and a seemingly unbreakable hold on the stars. But something was different now. Something new had emerged from the forgotten depths of space. It began with a transmission, a pulse of strange energy detected by a single scout ship near the edge of the Orion expanse. It was faint at first, barely a ripple in the vastness of space, but it grew in intensity, drawing the attention of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. The message was encrypted with an ancient code that no one recognized. But it was undeniable. The unknown had arrived. Admiral Raylon Kor of the Zoran Dominion, a stoic and calculating leader known for his unyielding tactics, was the first to respond. His warship, the Invictus, a colossal dreadnought capable of decimating entire fleets, was dispatched to the coordinates where the transmission had originated. He had heard whispers of the strange energy signatures before, but dismissing them as the result of a dying star or a natural anomaly had been the norm. Now he understood that something far more sinister, something far more dangerous, was taking form. The Dominion was not the only empire to act. From the ice-clad halls of the Erathian Federation, General Celine Trask, a brilliant strategist known for her ruthlessness, ordered her flagship, the Glacius, to follow suit. The Federation's warships had long been the envy of their rivals, but they were now facing a new, unquantifiable threat. The sudden urgency with which she commanded her forces to intercept the anomaly left no doubt in her mind that this was the moment they had all been waiting for, the moment that would determine the future of their empire. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, a different kind of leader was awakening to the threat. Cyril Kewin, a former pirate queen turned leader of the rebellious Free Coalition, had long dreamed of an uprising to overthrow the old galactic order. For years, her band of rogue starships had fought against the imperial regimes, but her forces had been scattered, underfunded, and outgunned. The Dominion, the Federation, the Kairos Pact, all had crushed any attempts at rebellion with overwhelming force. But now, with the transmission in the air, something had shifted. Something had changed. Cyril, whose sharp mind and daring spirit had earned her the respect of those she led, saw an opportunity, a chance to unite the disparate factions of the galaxy in one massive, coordinated effort to challenge the status quo. The transmission was unlike anything they had encountered before. It was not the work of one faction, but rather something beyond. The power emanating from it was staggering, yet its source remained a mystery. The messages it transmitted were cryptic but hinted at something extraordinary, an ancient weapon hidden in the darkest recesses of the galaxy. The mere idea that such a weapon could tip the balance of power was enough to set the wheels of war into motion. As Admiral Kor prepared to confront the source of the anomaly, his fleet entered an asteroid belt far from the reach of any established empire. What he found was not what he expected. Instead of the destruction he had prepared for, he discovered a ship, massive, unlike any known design, floating in the debris field. It was a relic from an ancient civilization, one long forgotten by history. Its dark hull shimmered with an energy that defied understanding. The Invictus's sensors went haywire as they tried to get a read on the ship. It was as if the ship itself was alive, its presence overwhelming and incomprehensible. But it was not alone. Other fleets began to converge from every direction, their vessels of war aiming their guns at one another, unsure of who was the true enemy. The universe had never been so close to an all-out war between the empires. Yet, as the armadas approached the strange ship, a sudden burst of light exploded from its core, a pulse of energy so intense it tore through the fleet's shields like paper. Raylon Kor's warship, along with several others, was pushed back, its hull vibrating under the force of the impact. This was no ancient weapon. It was something far greater. In the ensuing chaos, a new voice echoed through the minds of the commanders. It was neither a person nor an entity, but a collective consciousness ancient and powerful. It spoke of the end of the empires, of the dawning of a new age, and of the Starship Armadas that would clash to shape the future of the galaxy. The unknown had arrived and no one knew how to fight it. As the first battles erupted, the fate of the cosmos hung in the balance. Would the empires hold their dominance, or would they be consumed by the force that had awakened from the depths of space? Raylon Kor, Celine Trask, and Cyril Kewin were about to discover that their world would never be the same again. The galaxy was about to burn. The ancient ship, now identified as the Kesretach, pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly energy. Its presence in the asteroid field had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, disrupting not just the military forces of the empires but also the fragile alliances that held the galaxy's power structure together. This was no longer a simple clash of starships and weapons. It was the start of a war that would shake the foundations of everything the empires had built. Admiral Raylan Kor was one of the first to regroup after the brutal energy pulse, his flagship, the Invictus, limping back to a safe distance. He had seen countless battles in his career, but nothing could prepare him for the sheer force of the Kesrich. Even now, its presence hung in the air like an omnipresent shadow, and Raylan could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. There was something unnatural about the ship, a weight in the force of the energy that didn't belong to this universe. He was more certain than ever that they were not facing a threat from one of the empires but something far older. "Prepare to fall back," Raylan barked to his crew. "We need to reassess. This is no ordinary weapon. It's a power that even the Zoran Dominion cannot control." Despite his command, Raylan's mind raced with questions. Who, or what, was behind the Kesrich? Was it a weapon designed to annihilate empires, or was it something more, a key to something far grander? As his fleet retreated to a secure distance, he knew this battle was only the beginning. The Kesrich wasn't just some relic, it was a catalyst, and the galaxy would feel its consequences. Far from the devastation of the asteroid belt, General Celine Trask of the Arathian Federation stood on the observation deck of her flagship, the Glacius. A veteran of many campaigns, she had never been one to shy away from danger. But the sight of the Kesrich, even from light years away, unsettled her. It was unlike anything the Federation had ever encountered. "Report," she commanded. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Iker, turned from his console, his face pale. "General, we are receiving disturbing transmissions from the Outer Rim. The pulse from the Kesrich disrupted Federation signals. We're also seeing uncoordinated movements from the Dominion fleets. They're regrouping but their tactics are erratic. The anomaly's effects are spreading far and wide." Celine's eyes narrowed. She understood the implications of the Kesrich's awakening. It wasn't just the Dominion and the Federation that had been thrown into disarray. Every power in the galaxy would now scramble for control. For the first time in centuries, the Arathian Federation wasn't the most powerful force in the galaxy. "The question now is not what we lost but what we stand to gain," Celine murmured. Her mind raced as she formulated a strategy. With the Dominion likely to take the lead in investigating the Kesrich, it was vital for the Federation to seize any advantage it could before Raylan Kor could act. Back on the fringes of the galaxy, in the hidden space stations and bunkers of the Free Coalition, Serial Kwen watched the chaos unfold with a mixture of disbelief and hope. For years she had been forced to operate in the shadows, fighting against the crushing might of the Empire's war machines. Her fleet was a ragtag collection of renegades, former mercenaries, and exiled soldiers, no match for the might of the Federation or the Dominion. But the Kesrich had changed everything. "I told you," Serial said, her voice cold as she addressed her closest advisors. "This war was never about us taking the empires down with brute force. It was always about finding a way to break them from within." The holographic display before her flickered with images of the Kesrich, the massive ship flickering ominously in the center of the galaxy's shattered calm. "Now we have the power. We can harness it and we can use it to bring the entire Imperial structure to its knees." Her second-in-command, a grizzled veteran named Jorix, stepped forward. "You think the Kesrich will let us control it? We've seen what it can do. We've seen what it did to the Dominion fleet." Serial's lips twisted into a smile. "Exactly. The Kesrich isn't some godlike weapon to fear. It's a message. The old powers will not bend to our will unless we show them something even more terrifying. We're not going to just fight with guns and ships, we're going to force them to understand the power we now wield." Her voice carried a certain finality as she continued, "The Free Coalition will rise. The galaxy's empires will fall." Serial knew that this was no longer a game of survival. This was a game of domination. But even as she spoke with confidence, there was an unsettling truth she had to face. The Kesrich wasn't a power she could predict. It was a force beyond anything she or anyone else had ever known. No one truly understood its origins or what it might do if it was unleashed fully. And yet, Serial had to take the risk. If the Coalition didn't act now, they would be swallowed whole by the forces of the Dominion and the Federation. On the far side of the galaxy, Raylan Kor, Celine Trask, and Serial Kwen all stood on the precipice of an uncertain future, their fates intertwined by the vast, unknowable power of the Kesrich. The galaxy would burn, but who would rise from its ashes? The game had begun and no one knew the rules. The Kesrich was not a mere relic of a forgotten civilization. It was a signal, a calling card, a harbinger of the galaxy's inevitable transformation. Its power had sent ripples across the cosmos, igniting old rivalries, sharpening the blades of ancient foes, and breaking the fragile alliances that had held the galactic peace together for centuries. As the mighty fleets of the Zoran Dominion, the Arathian Federation, and the Free Coalition began to adjust to the chaotic aftermath of the Kesrith's first transmission, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Admiral Raylan Kor, having narrowly escaped the devastating effects of the ship's energy pulse, was left with a bitter realization. His once unchallenged position within the Dominion's military might no longer held the weight it once did. The Invictus had limped back to its homeworld of Azran, its fleet battered and its crew rattled. Raylan stared at the holographic map before him, which showed the scattered remnants of his fleet across the galaxy. The Dominion had always been a symbol of overwhelming might. Its fleet was vast, its weapons unmatched, and its leadership ironclad. But now, the power of the Kesrith had shown them all how fragile even the strongest of empires could be. Raylan knew that he was not the only one feeling the tremors of uncertainty. Far from it. "Admiral, the Federation has already mobilized," his communications officer reported. "We've received word that General Trask has begun sending her ships into the Outer Rim. The Free Coalition has also activated their fleet." Raylan's eyes darkened as he clenched his fists around the armrests of his command chair. He had always believed that the Dominion was the true power in the galaxy, that its fleet and its leaders could dominate and dictate the fate of any war. But now, with the Kesrith out there, unchallenged, every empire was scrambling to gain an upper hand, and the alliances that had long stood between the empires were crumbling. "If the Federation thinks they can get ahead of us, they're gravely mistaken," Raylan muttered, his mind racing. He knew the Dominion would not be the first to fall. Their loyalty to their leaders ran too deep for that. But Raylan also understood that in the new galaxy that was taking shape, loyalty to empires would mean nothing. Whoever controlled the Kesrith would command the stars. He turned sharply to his fleet's intelligence officer, a sharp-eyed woman named Captain Mirren. "Prepare the Invictus for a journey to the Outer Rim. We need to see what the Federation is after. If they found anything more about the Kesrith, we need to know immediately." Meanwhile, General Selene Trask, commander of the Arathian Federation, stood before her own war council. The Glacius had already moved into the orbit of the Outer Rim's contested sectors, ready to fight back the chaos and claim any valuable resources, or better yet, the Kesrith itself. Yet even as she prepared her forces, doubts began to creep into her mind. The Federation had long been the most disciplined military power in the galaxy. But Selene, unlike her predecessors, understood that discipline alone would not be enough to secure victory now. The Kesrith was a force that defied all conventional warfare, a force that threatened to strip away the very notion of control. No empire could dominate the galaxy on its own anymore. And the Federation had learned the hard way that underestimating their enemies was a grave mistake. "General, we have intercepted a communication from the Free Coalition," one of her senior officers, Lieutenant Traver, reported. "Serial Kwan is aware of our movements." Selene didn't flinch. She had long expected the Coalition to take notice of the Federation's activity. Serial Kwan had always been a shrewd and unpredictable leader, one who had an uncanny ability to rally the outcasts and the rebels. If anyone was going to challenge the old empires with the might of the Kesrith, it would be Serial. "Let her come," Selene said calmly, her voice cold with determination. "If the Free Coalition thinks they can match the might of the Federation, then they'll see the strength of true military power. We won't hesitate to crush them if they get in our way." But beneath her steely resolve, Selene knew that war with the Coalition was not the immediate concern. The Kesrith was an unknown, an unpredictable factor in the galaxy's balance of power. If Serial was as cunning as Selene suspected, she would see the same truth, that in order to truly control the Kesrith, the galactic powers would need to stop fighting among themselves and come together to face the greater threat. However, the universe was a far more dangerous place than Selene had realized. And the truth that she had overlooked was now dawning on her. The Kesrith was not just a weapon. It was a test. A test that would expose the fragility of empires, and only those who could evolve and adapt would survive. Serial Kwan, from her hidden command center deep within Coalition-controlled space, prepared her own gambit. Unlike the Federation and the Dominion, the Free Coalition had no illusions of grand empire building. Their aim was different: to strip away the old structures and empower the galaxy's millions of disenfranchised worlds. But even as she rallied her forces, the knowledge that the Kesrith was a weapon of unimaginable power weighed heavily on her mind. Could the Coalition truly control it, or would it tear them apart as it had already done to the established empires? The Kesra is our chance to reshape the galaxy, Serial said to her closest advisors. But we cannot be blind to its power. We'll need allies, temporary ones perhaps, but alliances nonetheless. Jorix, her battle-hardened second-in-command, raised an eyebrow. You trust the Dominion or Federation to cooperate? They'll never surrender to anyone else. I don't expect them to, Serial replied, her tone full of quiet conviction. But I do expect them to recognize the truth, that none of us can control the Kesra alone. As the three factions steeled themselves for the inevitable clash, they were all unaware that a greater, far more ancient force was watching from the shadows, waiting for the empires and the rebels to destroy each other, so it could finally claim its place in the galaxy. The Kesra was not the endgame. It was only the beginning. As the galaxy teetered on the edge of full-scale war, the true nature of the Kesra was still a mystery. Despite the unprecedented energies it had released, no one had yet learned its secrets. The Empire scrambled for dominance, driven by a mix of fear, greed, and the hope that whoever controlled the Kesra could reshape the future of the cosmos. But in their haste to claim it, they failed to realize that the ship was more than just a weapon. It was a beacon, a signal that something older and far more dangerous was awakening in the darkest corners of space. Admiral Raylan Kor, still recovering from the harrowing encounter with the Kesra, had returned to his warship, the Invictus, now docked in the heart of the Zoran Dominion's capital system. His mind was consumed with the pulse of energy the ship had emitted. It was not like anything he had ever encountered, not even during the Dominion's most brutal campaigns. This was something different. Something that defied every known law of physics and military strategy. Raylan stood in the command center of the Invictus, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. The coordinates for the Kesra were still marked, glowing like a wound in the fabric of the universe. Yet, Raylan had little faith that simply attacking it head-on would yield any results. No, they needed answers and he needed them fast. The Dominion had always prided itself on its technological superiority, but against a force like the Kesra, technology alone would not be enough. There had to be more to it, something ancient buried deep in the galaxy's history. Admiral, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Mirren, his trusted intelligence officer. We've intercepted a series of encrypted transmissions. Someone or something is trying to make contact with us. From who? Raylan asked, his tone sharp. Unclear. But the transmission, it bears the same signature as the pulse we detected from the Kesra. Raylan's eyes narrowed. Prepare a secure channel. We'll answer it directly. As the transmission flickered to life on the holoscreen, the figure that appeared was unexpected. Not a human nor any known species, but an ancient being that appeared to be made of energy itself, its form shifting and flowing in strange, otherworldly patterns. Admiral Raylan Kor, the entity spoke, its voice resonating in the depths of Raylan's mind. It was neither malevolent nor kind but neutral, an unsettling calm. The Kesra has awoken. The time has come for the end of the old order. Raylan's pulse quickened. Who are you? What do you want with us? I am the Warden, the entity replied. I am the keeper of the balance. The Kesra is the key to something far greater. It is not simply a weapon to be wielded, nor is it a tool for destruction. It is a lock and the universe is the door. Raylan felt a chill crawl down his spine. The Warden's words hinted at something far beyond his understanding. A lock? A door to what? The Warden did not answer directly. Instead, it shifted and the hologram expanded, showing the Kesra from a new angle, an impossibly ancient design far older than the Dominion or any known empire. That which lies beyond is what you fear. The empires will crumble, and the galaxy will fall to chaos unless you unlock what was meant to stay sealed. Raylan was taken aback. The Warden's cryptic words sent shivers through him. The Kesra was not merely a weapon or tool, it was a gateway, a force capable of changing the very nature of the universe itself. He didn't know if the Warden was trying to warn him or manipulate him, but it was clear that the galaxy was on the brink of something far darker than any war they had ever known. I'll take no part in this madness, Raylan said, though his words felt weak in the face of the Warden's power. We will destroy the Kesra and stop whatever you intend. The Warden's expression shifted and a low hum filled the command center. You cannot destroy what has already been set in motion. Before Raylan could respond, the transmission ended, leaving only a deep silence in its wake. The Invictus was eerily still as the crew exchanged nervous glances. Prepare to move, Raylan said, his voice resolute, though inside he was consumed with doubt. We will follow the signal. And we will be ready for anything. Across the galaxy, in the depths of the Free Coalition's hidden fleet, Serial Kwan stood before a similar transmission. The message was identical, though the Warden's words were not directed solely at Raylon. Serial, too, felt the chilling weight of its warning. The Kesrit is not a weapon of destruction, the Warden's voice reverberated through her ship's comms. It is the key to what comes next. Do not be blinded by the old Empire's thirst for power. Join me and you will see the truth. Serial clenched her fists. The Coalition had always been the underdog, fractured, divided, and perpetually fighting for survival. But the Warden's offer was something far more dangerous than she had anticipated. The promise of understanding the Kesrit was tempting, but it came with a risk. Was it truly a force for good, or was it the herald of destruction? Jorix, she said softly, prepare the fleet. We move out. Her decision was made. She would not let the Dominion or the Federation have the Kesrit unchallenged. But she would not simply blindly follow the Warden's mysterious call either. The truth behind the Kesrit had to be uncovered, before anyone else could seize control of it. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance, and Serial would ensure that the Coalition held a stake in the coming future, no matter the cost. The Warden's cryptic words echoed in her mind, the universe is the door. None of them knew what lay beyond that door. But the path forward would be perilous, and not everyone would survive the journey. The galaxy, already fractured by years of war, now found itself at the mercy of an ancient power none of the empires fully understood. The Kesrit had been activated, and its cryptic message had stirred something deep within the hearts of the Dominion, the Federation, and the Free Coalition alike. Each faction believed they had the right to control it. But the Warden's ominous warning loomed over them all, the universe is the door. None knew what lay beyond, but every faction knew one thing for certain. Whoever controlled the Kesrit would hold the key to the future. Admiral Raylon Corps Invictus surged forward toward the last known coordinates of the Kesrit, the hum of its engines resonating through the ship like the heartbeat of a predator on the hunt. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. The Warden's warning echoed in his mind, you cannot destroy what has already been set in motion. Raylon wasn't sure whether the Kesrit was a harbinger of salvation or destruction, but he did know one thing, the Dominion would not let this power slip through their fingers. He had made up his mind. If it came down to it, they would use force. The Invictus was more than capable of launching an offensive against the Federation or the Coalition if necessary. Admiral, Mirren's voice crackled over the comms, we've detected a massive fleet movement in the Zoran system. The Federation is moving into position. Raylan's jaw clenched. Celine Trask was no fool. She knew the stakes of this battle, and she would not allow the Dominion to be the first to reach the Kesrit. But Raylon wasn't about to let the Federation claim it first either. Set a course for the Outer Rim, he commanded. Prepare all weapons. We won't give them the advantage. Meanwhile, on the edge of the galaxy, General Celine Trask stood on the observation deck of the Glacius, her flagship, her cold eyes scanning the dark expanse of space ahead. The Federation had already begun a massive buildup. The fleet was ready. But Trask knew there was no room for hesitation. General, a voice from behind her broke her thoughts. It was Lieutenant Traver. The Dominion has mobilized. Admiral Raylon Corps is leading the charge. If we don't act now, they'll beat us to the Kesrit. Celine's lips curled into a thin smile. The Federation had always prided itself on its discipline and its ability to hold the line. But against the Dominion's raw military might, even she knew they would need to be more than just reactive. They would need to strike decisively. Activate all fleet units, Celine ordered. We'll outmaneuver them. I won't let Raylon Corps control the Kesrit. Prepare for a full assault. It's time we show the galaxy what the Federation is capable of. As her fleet moved into formation, Celine's mind was consumed with a single thought. They had to secure the Kesrit at all costs. She had no illusions about her alliance with the Dominion. This wasn't about diplomacy, it was about survival. If the Dominion reached the Kesrit first, they would use its power to crush the Federation under their boot heel. The Federation had been on the defensive long enough. It was time for them to take the initiative. Far from the conflict, in the deepest recesses of Coalition-controlled space, Serial Kwan sat at the helm of her command ship, the Eclipse. The crew around her was tense. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks. But no matter how much they strategized, they were still the smallest force in the galaxy, outgunned and outnumbered by both the Federation and the Dominion. General, Jorix's voice cut through her thoughts. The Dominion and Federation are both moving toward the Kesrit. We have no time to waste. Cyrill's lips parted in a thin smile. The Kesrith will be ours. But we will not fight them in open battle. Jorix's brow furrowed. What are you suggesting? We will use their desperation against them, she replied with quiet confidence. Let them fight each other. They are blinded by their thirst for power. We will strike when they are at their weakest. The Eclipse and its fleet moved silently through the shadows of deep space, out of range of both the Federation and the Dominion's forces. Their plan was simple but dangerous. Cyril would wait for the two empires to engage each other. Once they had bled each other dry, the coalition would step in, take control of the Kesrith, and present themselves as the saviors of the galaxy. However, even as Cyril prepared her fleet for the final push, she couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her. The Kesrith was not a force that could be controlled easily. The Warden had warned her that the universe was the door, but Cyril knew that no one truly understood what was on the other side. Her thoughts were interrupted by a transmission from her lead scientist, Dr. Tessa Vorn. General, we've made a breakthrough in analyzing the Kesrith's energy signature. It's not just a weapon, it's an interface, a bridge between worlds. I think we can reverse engineer it. But, it's going to take time. Cyril's heart quickened. A bridge between worlds? What did that mean? She had to act quickly, but if the coalition was going to make a move, they needed the right information. How much time do we have? A few hours at best, Dr. Vorn replied, her voice tinged with urgency. After that, we'll be too far behind. Cyril's eyes hardened with resolve. Time was not on their side. She would have to make her move soon. If they could gain control of the Kesrith before the others, they could alter the balance of power forever. As Raylon Corps' fleet moved closer to the outer rim, and Celine Trask prepared for her decisive strike, Cyril Kwen's fleet closed in on the periphery of the Kesrith's location. A galactic collision was inevitable, but no one knew exactly who would emerge victorious. And in the shadows, the Warden watched as the door to the future began to open. The galaxy was on the brink. The Kesrith, that enigmatic, incomprehensible relic, was the object of desire for three of the most powerful factions to ever shape the stars. The Dominion, the Federation, and the Free Coalition all moved toward it with a singular goal: to claim control. Yet none of them could truly comprehend the true cost of that power. The Warden's warning still echoed in their minds: the universe is the door. But what awaited beyond that door was unknown, and the tension was palpable. The fleet of the Dominion, led by Admiral Raylon Corps and the mighty Invictus, was the first to arrive at the edge of the outer rim, a vast expanse of dead space where the Kesrith was hidden. Raylon stood on the command bridge of his flagship, his gaze hard, focused. Admiral, Mirren's voice cut through his thoughts, we're picking up Federation signals. They're entering the system. Raylon's lips curled into a thin smile. Celine Trask was predictable. She wouldn't waste time, she would meet him head-on. Set a course to intercept, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Prepare all weapons. Let's make sure the Federation knows who owns this sector. Meanwhile, deep in the Coalition's fleet, Cyril Kwen watched from her command chair as her ships dropped out of their stealth mode, their engines humming softly in the cold vacuum of space. The Eclipse and her fleet had arrived just outside the radius of both the Dominion and Federation forces. They were watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. We're in position, General, Jorix said, his voice low with expectation. The other fleets are heading straight for each other. It's only a matter of time before they clash. Cyril's eyes glinted with cold determination. Let them. Their arrogance blinds them. They'll tear each other apart and then we'll move in. We're not here to fight them, we're here to win. Her words carried a quiet confidence, but beneath it was a deep-seated fear. She knew the risk they were taking, but there was no other choice. If the Coalition did not seize the Kesrith, the galaxy would fall to the empires. And if they didn't act fast, it would be too late. The battle began in a flash. The Dominion's massive warships surged forward, guns primed, as they engaged the Federation's fleet head-on. The sky lit up with the flash of weaponry, as both sides exchanged fire in a relentless assault. The space around the Kesrith turned into a battlefield, a brutal, unforgiving clash of titans. Admiral Raylon Corps' flagship, the Invictus, led the charge, its massive guns tearing through the Federation's front lines. The Federation's Glacius, under General Celine Trask, met the oncoming barrage with calculated precision, retaliating with a fury that matched the Dominion's might. The starships on both sides exchanged heavy fire, their shields buckling under the intense strain. The battle was fierce and the stakes could not have been higher. Both empires were determined to secure the Kesrith. They were blind to the danger of fighting in proximity to the ancient relic. Each volley fired, each maneuver executed, pushed the galaxy closer to the brink of annihilation. As the Dominion and Federation fleets locked in a deadly embrace, the coalition made its move. Serial Kwen watched from the bridge of the Eclipse as her fleet slowly advanced, staying just outside the range of both sides' fire. The Kesretach loomed on the horizon, its dark silhouette casting a strange, foreboding shadow across the battlefield. Its energy pulses, though faint, seemed to grow stronger with every passing moment. "They're distracted," Serial murmured to herself, her fingers tightening around the armrests of her chair. "Now is our chance." "General," Jorix's voice was sharp, "the Federation is falling back. The Dominion is pushing them back. The Kesretach is unprotected. This is our moment." Serial stood, her expression hardening. "Activate all stealth systems. I want to be in range in 3 minutes. Prepare the boarding crews. Once we take the Kesretach, we end this war." The Kesretach was as much a mystery as it was a prize. As the coalition moved into position, the two warring factions continued their brutal assault on each other. Both Raylan and Celine were too focused on their respective goals to notice the smaller fleet that had silently moved into the shadow of the ancient ship. Raylan's eyes flicked to the view screen, scanning the ongoing battle. Victory was within reach, but then something caught his attention. He looked up sharply, realizing that the Federation was retreating, but not in the direction he had anticipated. They were falling back, leaving an opening on the battlefield. He turned to Mirren, his expression hardening. "Where is the coalition?" Her eyes widened in realization. "They're behind us, Admiral. They've made a run for the Kesret." Raylan's jaw clenched. "Damn them. They're too late. The Kesretach is ours." But as he spoke, his eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. The energy pulses from the Kesretach were growing, intensifying with every second. The ancient ship was waking up, its dormant systems stirring to life. Whatever the coalition was about to do, it would soon be irrelevant. "Deploy all interceptors," Raylan barked. "The Kesretach is not falling into their hands." Serial Kwen watched as her fleet moved closer to the Kesretach. But as they neared, something unprecedented happened. The Kesretach emitted a pulse, a wave of energy so powerful that it rippled through space, distorting the fabric of reality itself. Ships were torn from their trajectories, the Eclipse among them as the shockwave blasted through the battlefield. It was as if the Kesretach had become sentient, aware of the chaos unfolding around it. A deep, resonating hum filled the air as the ancient ship's systems powered up in a way none of them had anticipated. Serial's eyes widened as the energy from the Kesretach surged outward, enveloping the entire system. For a moment, everything seemed to slow, time itself bending under the force of the ship's power. Ships from both the Dominion and the Federation were caught in its wake, their systems failing, their crews scrambling to survive. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the pulse dissipated. The Kesretach had spoken. But the message was not for the empires. It was a warning, one that would reshape everything they knew about the galaxy. The ship was not merely a relic. It was a sentinel. A force of nature that had been dormant for millennia, waiting for this very moment. The Kesretach had chosen its course. And it was not one the galaxy's empires would control. The galaxy shuddered as if the very stars themselves had felt the touch of the Kesretach. Its pulse had sent waves of disorientation across the battlefield. The Dominion, the Federation, and the Coalition, once aligned in their mutual desire to claim the ship, now stood on the precipice of something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The battle had not ended, but its direction had changed irrevocably. The Kesretach was no longer simply a prize to be won. It had become something else entirely. Serial Kwen gripped the armrests of her command chair with white-knuckled force, staring at the chaos unfolding on the battlefield. Her fleet had been momentarily disoriented, thrown off course by the devastating shockwave from the Kesret. Even now, her crew was scrambling to regain control. "What just happened?" Jorix's voice came through, tinged with disbelief. "I don't know," Serial replied, her voice laced with tension. "The Kesret, it's alive. It's aware." Indeed, the ship now seemed to pulse with an almost sentient energy, glowing in shades of deep violet and silver, casting an eerie light across the remaining fleets. It was as though the Kesretach had come to life, rejecting the violent contest between the empires. As Serial watched, a cold realization settled in. The ship wasn't waiting for someone to claim it. It had been waiting for the galaxy to break itself apart. And the empires had obliged. Across the battlefield, Raylan Kor stood at the bridge of the Invictus, watching in shock as the energy from the Kesretach distorted reality around him. The energy was unlike anything he had encountered before, far beyond the scope of conventional weaponry or technology. It was as if the ship had a purpose, a will of its own, and that purpose was not aligned with the desires of the Dominion. "Admiral," Mirren called out, her voice edged with panic. "The Kesretich, its energy is escalating. We're being pulled toward it, our systems are failing." Raylan's heart pounded in his chest as he felt the power of the Kesretich wrenching at his ship. His sensors were flickering and the very fabric of space seemed to stretch and twist. He knew that if they couldn't regain control, they would be helpless. "Get us out of here," Raylan barked. But it was too late. The Kesretich had already begun its transformation. Meanwhile, aboard the Glacius, General Celine Trask fought to keep her ship in one piece. Her face was taut with concentration, her hands moving over the controls with military precision as the Kesretich continued to unleash its chaotic pulse. "Commander, can we establish any sort of communications with the Kesretich?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "We've tried every channel, General," came the frustrated reply. "It's not responding. We're losing power, shields are down, and the engines are beginning to fail." Celine's mind raced. She had faced down Dominion fleets before, but this was different. The Kesretich was not just a weapon. It was a force that bent the very nature of reality. Her instincts as a soldier screamed at her to retreat, but her pride, and her hunger for control, held her back. "I won't retreat," she muttered to herself, her voice low, almost as if speaking to the ship itself. "Not now. We fought too long for this." Her hands tightened on the controls. But as the Kesretich pulsed once again, the ship groaned under the strain and the lights flickered out. Back in the shadows of the battlefield, hidden away from the chaos, the Warden watched. Its presence lingered, not in the physical realm, but as a psychic pulse that resonated throughout the cosmos. It had never intended for the galaxy's empires to control the Kesretich. They were mere pawns, chasing after a relic that held no loyalty to any of them. The Warden's voice echoed in the minds of the key players, particularly Serial, Raylan, and Celine, who now stood at the center of this cosmic drama. "The door is opening," the Warden's voice reverberated through their minds, its tone both cold and ancient. "You have failed to see what lies beyond. It is too late to turn back now. The Kesretich will not allow you to control it. You are not its masters. You are its test." Serial's eyes widened as the Warden's words resonated in her mind. She could feel its presence, a vast, almost infinite consciousness that seemed to stretch through time and space itself. This was no ordinary relic. The Kesretich was not merely a weapon, it was the gatekeeper to something far more profound. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking, but filled with fierce determination. "What do you want from us?" The Warden's reply was both calm and ominous. "You must choose. You will either rise above your petty conflicts, or you will be consumed. The Kesretich does not serve those who seek to dominate. It serves only those who seek understanding." Serial clenched her fists, feeling the weight of the Warden's words. The Kesretich was not the key to universal domination. It was a test of something greater. And she knew with a dawning clarity that her people, her fleet, had a choice to make. Across the battlefield, Raylan's face contorted in frustration. He had led the Dominion through countless wars, fought for control, power, and supremacy. But now he was faced with an entity that would not yield to conventional strategies. The Kesretich would not bend to his will. "What is this madness?" Raylan spat, his voice low, full of both disbelief and rage. "We fought for this power, we deserve it." But deep down he too could sense the truth. The Kesretich was not his to control, and that realization struck him like a thunderbolt. In the heart of the Kesretich, an unseen force began to stir. The ship's internal systems hummed to life with a strange alien intelligence, its vast, intricate architecture slowly unfolding as though it were a living organism. Light from its core began to pulse in a pattern, casting strange shadows across the empty void. And then the ship spoke, not in words but in a psychic projection that vibrated through the very atoms of space itself. The Warden's voice echoed again, but this time it was not a warning, it was a command. "The time has come. Choose wisely." The door to the future had opened. But only those who were willing to let go of their past could walk through it. The galaxy was a war-torn expanse, its civilizations fractured by empires that sought to dominate, control, and conquer. The Kesretich had been the symbol of power for so long, a coveted relic that promised dominance over the stars. But as the pulsing energy from the ship's core echoed through space, all of that seemed trivial in comparison to what the Kesretich truly was, a test. And the stakes had never been higher. Serial Kwen stood at the helm of the Eclipse, her hands gripping the control panel as the reality of what was happening began to sink in. The warden's voice had filled her mind and the message was clear: you are not its masters. You are its test. Her thoughts swirled, torn between the fierce ambition of her people and the undeniable sense that this moment was more than just a battle for control. It was an opportunity to break free from the cycle of endless conflict that had defined the galaxy. To embrace something new, something unknown. We need to decide, Jorix said quietly from behind her, his voice filled with uncertainty. If we press forward we risk everything. But if we pull back we may never have another chance. Serial turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. What if the Kesrith isn't about conquering Jorix? What if it's about understanding? Her words hung in the air as a silence settled between them, but her resolve was growing clearer. The coalition, a fractured collection of diverse factions, had always been the underdog in the conflict between the mighty Dominion and Federation. They were used to fighting, to surviving, but now the Kesrith had revealed a different path, a path of transcendence. Meanwhile, aboard the Invictus, Admiral Raylon Kor was struggling to keep his fleet intact. The pulsing energy from the Kesrith had destabilized everything. His ships, his systems, even his mind. He felt the weight of his decisions, the years of warfare, the countless lives lost. And now for the first time he was uncertain. The Kesrith was no mere weapon to be wielded. It was something more. Something that did not care for the petty squabbles of empires. Admiral, Mirren's voice came through urgently. Our ships are failing. The Kesrith's energy is interfering with all of our systems. We can't hold the fleet together much longer. Raylan's fist slammed onto the console. We fought for this power, Mirren. The Dominion has bled for this. I won't let it slip away. But deep down Raylan felt it too, a nagging doubt that clung to him, threatening to unravel everything he had fought for. This wasn't just a war for control. The Kesrith was pushing them toward something greater, and yet the empires weren't ready. They were blinded by their thirst for power. In the heart of the glacius, General Celine Trask's mind raced. Her ship, like all others, was battered by the immense energy emanating from the Kesrith. Her fleet was faltering, and the Federation was struggling to hold the line. General, her comm officer said, voice tense. The Kesrith's energy is causing anomalies. The very fabric of space is warping. We won't be able to maintain our position much longer. Celine's eyes narrowed. She had led the Federation for years, playing the political game with careful calculation. But now the game had changed. The Kesrith was not a weapon. It was something ancient, something beyond their understanding. But was it too late to change her course? I've always believed in victory, Celine said, her voice low. But perhaps it's time to redefine what that means. The three leaders, Raylon, Celine, and Serial, were not alone in their reflections. All across the battlefield, the Kesrith's influence spread, rippling through the minds of the soldiers, commanders, and officers who had come to fight for control. It was as if the ship itself was reaching into their very souls, questioning their motivations, their desires, their beliefs. The warden's voice echoed once more, resonating through the vastness of space and into the minds of the three commanders. The door has opened. But it will only remain open for those willing to change. The path to salvation, or destruction, is yours to choose. For a moment, time itself seemed to hold its breath. The stars flickered as the energy from the Kesrith enveloped the fleets. The warden's words hung heavy in the air, choose wisely. In that moment, Serial made her decision. The coalition had always been the underdog, the outsider. They had fought to survive, to resist domination. But what if survival was no longer enough? What if the true goal was to build something new? Jorix, she said, her voice steady. Prepare the fleet. We're leaving. Jorix turned, confusion in his eyes. Leaving? But we're so close. No, Serial interrupted. We've been blinded by the idea of winning. This isn't about taking control. This is about breaking the cycle. She stood, a sense of peace settling over her. For the first time, she felt a clear direction, not driven by the will of conquest, but by a desire for understanding. She had chosen the path of change. On the Invictus, Raylan's grip tightened around the command chair, his mind torn. His entire life had been about control, about leading the Dominion to power. The Kesrith had been the ultimate prize. But now he felt the weight of his choices. Admiral, we cannot hold on much longer. Mirren shouted. We have to act or we'll be consumed. Raylon stared at the swirling mass of energy before him, a reflection of the turmoil within. He had always prided himself on his ability to lead, to conquer. But now that very strength felt hollow. The Kesretich wasn't something he could control. It was a force beyond him, beyond any empire. His resolve shattered, and he finally understood. The fight for power had led him here, to the brink of annihilation. With a deep, shuddering breath, Raylan gave the order. Withdraw the fleet. We cannot win this fight. Celine's voice was quiet but resolute as she issued her orders. Pull back. We've lost this battle. Her crew hesitated, shocked by her sudden retreat, but Celine knew that the true power lay not in holding on, but in knowing when to let go. For years she had led the Federation with an iron grip, but now she understood. True strength came not from conquering but from evolving. The Federation fleet turned, retreating from the energy storm of the Kesretich. As the fleets pulled away, the Kesretich stood alone in the void, its energy still pulsing but now at a calmer, more measured pace. The three factions had made their choice, and the door to the future had closed. The Kesretich had shown them that power alone was not enough to shape the galaxy's destiny. It had tested them, and now it had moved on. The Warden's final words echoed in the minds of all who had been present. You have seen the door. Now choose how to walk through it. For some, the battle was over. But for others, it had just begun. The end.